5 days. That is how long Trump gave Iran to breathe. But on the same day, he posted his peace message on Truth Social. 5,000 Marines were already at sea. 2 assault fleets moving in from opposite directions. 1 from Japan, 1 from California. These are not support troops. These are not peacekeepers. These are amphibious assault forces, trained for one specific mission: boarding ships, crossing open water under fire, and storming a hostile coastline. So the question is not whether Trump is planning a landing. The question is where, when, and what happens the moment those Marines hit the beach. Today, we break it down completely. The ships, the units, the weapons, the target, and the strategy behind all of it. On Monday, March 23rd, Trump posted on Truth Social that the US and Iran had been engaged in, and I'm quoting directly, very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of hostilities. He announced a 5-day pause on strikes against Iranian power plants, conditional on the success of ongoing negotiations. Iran's response came within hours, and it was not what Trump described. Iran's foreign ministry categorically denied that any negotiations are taking place with Washington. The state-owned Iran newspaper published the government's official position. Trump's remarks are part of efforts to reduce energy prices and buy time to implement his military plans. Iran did not accept the pause. Iran declared it proof that the United States blinked. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi went further in a public statement. He said, and these are his exact words, "We never asked for a ceasefire, and we have never asked even for negotiation. We are ready to defend ourselves as long as it takes." Araghchi explained Iran's position on talks directly. "We don't see any reason why we should talk with Americans, because we were talking with them when they decided to attack us, and that was for the second time. There is no good experience talking with Americans." Iran's military spokesperson added a separate statement. Tehran has full control over the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and waters off Oman. Iran does not need to lay mines to assert its position. One senior Iranian advisor went even further, claiming publicly that the war was effectively over after day 15, that the US understood there was no path to victory, and that it was Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu who pushed Washington to continue fighting. Iran also threatened to target power and water infrastructure across Gulf states if US strikes on Iranian civilian infrastructure resumed. So let's be clear about what actually happened. Trump offered a pause, Iran rejected it publicly, called it a retreat, and immediately escalated its rhetoric. That is not the response of a side that is ready to negotiate. That is the response of a side that believes it is winning the information war, even while losing the military one. And that gap between Iran's public position and its actual military situation is exactly why 5,000 Marines are currently crossing the ocean. The US-Israel war against Iran began February 28th. 4 weeks in, the United States has bombed hundreds of Iranian military targets. Iran's navy is largely destroyed. Its air force is not operational. Its nuclear enrichment sites have been hit repeatedly. And yet, the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. Iran closed it not with warships or fighter jets. It closed it with mines and with missiles fired at any commercial vessel that tried to pass. Small, cheap weapons doing billions of dollars of damage to the global economy every single day. 20% of the world's oil transits that strait. Since the war started, that traffic has collapsed. Oil hit $104 a barrel. American consumers are paying the price at the pump. Farm states are facing fertilizer shortages. The economic pressure inside the United States is now real and growing. Trump cannot bomb his way out of this problem. You cannot destroy a naval mine with a cruise missile. You cannot reopen a shipping lane from 40,000 feet. At some point, someone has to go in physically and take control of the situation on the ground. That is what 5,000 Marines are for. Let's go through the actual forces being assembled because the details tell you everything about the intended mission. The first fleet is the USS Tripoli Expeditionary Strike Group. It departed its home base in Okinawa, Japan, on approximately March 13th. Commercial satellite images confirmed it moving southwest through the South China Sea on March 15th. Already at sea, before most people knew this deployment was happening. The USS Tripoli is an America-class amphibious assault ship, 45,000 tons, 844 feet long, full-length flight deck. It is designed to function not as a transport barge, but as a light aircraft carrier capable of launching combat operations. What it carries: F-35, B Lightning II stealth fighter jets, the short takeoff vertical landing variant. These aircraft can strike targets deep inside Iran, evade radar, and return to the ship without a conventional runway. MV-22, Osprey tiltrotor aircraft, hybrid helicopter airplane capable of flying 270 knots and inserting Marines up to 800 nautical miles away from the ship. A H-1Z Viper attack helicopters for close air support during a beach landing. Traveling with the Tripoli, the guided missile cruiser USS Robert Smalls, and the guided missile destroyer USS Rafael Peralta, both armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles and surface-to-air interceptors. The Marines aboard. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, approximately 2,500 personnel. This unit is based in Japan and is the U.S. military's primary rapid response force for the entire Indo-Pacific region. Pulling it to the Persian Gulf means leaving a strategic gap in Asia, something the Pentagon does not do casually. The second fleet is the USS Boxer Amphibious Ready Group. It departed Naval Base San Diego on March 19th, 3 weeks ahead of its originally planned schedule. The Pentagon accelerated this deployment. That word, accelerated, is the most important word in this entire story. The USS Boxer is a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship. It carries the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, another 2,200 to 2,500 Marines. The USS Comstock, an amphibious dock landing ship, departed San Diego the same day alongside the Boxer. Combined total arriving in the region, approximately 5,000 Marines, 6 amphibious warships, 2 full strike groups, F-35B stealth jets, dozens of Osprey aircraft, and enough landing craft to put multiple infantry battalions ashore simultaneously at different locations. Mick Mulroy, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, stated publicly, "You do not pull an assault unit out of the Pacific, leaving that region more exposed just to show them off." These forces were requested by U.S. Central Command because commanders needed operational options, not diplomatic ones. It is important to understand exactly what a Marine Expeditionary Unit is, because it is a very specific weapon system designed for a very specific type of mission. Each MEU is a self-contained combined arms force. It has its own infantry, battalion landing teams trained to assault beaches and urban objectives under fire. It has its own aviation, attack helicopters, transport aircraft, and now F-35B fighters providing stealth air superiority overhead. It has its own logistics, fuel, ammunition, medical, enough to sustain independent operations for 15 days without resupply. Their primary missions: amphibious assault on defended coastlines, raids on specific high-value targets, seizure and holding of key infrastructure, airfield and port capture. Their weapons: M27 infantry automatic rifles, M2 heavy machine guns, TOW anti-tank missile systems, Javelin anti-armor missiles, 81mm mortars, shoulder-launched rockets, plus the full aviation package. The Viper attack helicopters carry 20mm cannons, Hydra, 70 rockets, and Hellfire missiles. The MV-22 Osprey is particularly important for this mission because the target, Karg Island, sits 15 miles off the Iranian coast. An Osprey can launch from the USS Tripoli positioned well outside the threat envelope, fly low and fast, and deliver a full Marine rifle platoon directly onto an objective within minutes. No beach landing required, no amphibious tractors grinding through surf, vertical insertion directly onto the target. These are the specific capabilities you need to seize an island 15 miles from a hostile coast. Every serious military analyst covering this conflict has pointed to the same objective. Not the strait itself, not the Iranian mainland. Karg Island. Karg is a small island in the northern Persian Gulf, 15 miles off the southwestern coast of Iran, approximately 20 square kilometers of land, a population of a few thousand people, mostly oil workers and their families. And through this island flows 90% of Iran's crude oil exports. Every barrel of oil Iran sells to China, India, Japan, South Korea, or any other buyer is loaded onto tankers at Karg Island's terminals. The island has 6 major loading berths capable of handling supertankers simultaneously. It has storage tanks holding millions of barrels of crude in reserve. It is the financial heartbeat of the Iranian economy. On March 13th, the United States struck Karg Island. Approximately 100 military targets destroyed. Radar installations, surface-to-air missile batteries, anti-ship missile launchers, coastal artillery positions, communications infrastructure, and port security facilities. Every defensive system on the island was systematically eliminated, but Trump personally announced after the strike the oil infrastructure was left intact. The loading terminals were not touched. The storage tanks were not hit. You do not leave the oil infrastructure standing because you plan to bomb it later. You leave it standing because you plan to use it. Since the March 13th strikes, the U.S. Navy has been flying MQ-4 Sea Triton surveillance drones over Karg Island on continuous rotation. These are high-altitude, long-endurance unmanned aircraft. They can orbit a target for 24 hours straight, collecting imagery, signals intelligence, and detailed mapping of every structure, vehicle, and personnel movement on the island. That is not pre-strike reconnaissance. That is pre-assault reconnaissance. The targeting package for a bombing mission takes hours to build. The intelligence package for an amphibious assault, understanding exact defensive positions, entry points, choke points, building layouts, takes days and weeks of continuous observation. The U.S. has been building that package since March 13th. The strategic logic is simple. A destroyed Karg Island is worthless to Iran, to the U.S., to global oil markets. A captured Karg Island, with its loading terminals intact and operational, is the single most powerful negotiating chip in this entire conflict. Iran cannot fund its military, pay its fighters, supply its proxy forces, or sustain its economy without Karg Island's oil revenue. The moment Marines raise an American flag over those loading terminals, Iran has 24 to 48 hours before its financial system begins collapsing. That is the gun Trump is loading while he talks about peace. If this analysis is useful, hit subscribe now. We break down these military movements every week with the detail they deserve. And drop a comment. Are you proud of how the U.S. military is handling this? Or worried about where it leads? Every comment gets read. Tell us what you think. Let's walk through how a Karg Island seizure operation would actually unfold, based on the assets being assembled and the intelligence being collected. Phase 1. Suppression. Before any Marine sets foot on the island, the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group launches a final suppression package. Tomahawk cruise missiles from the USS Robert Smalls eliminate any Iranian fast boat squadrons in the northern Gulf. F/A-18 Super Hornets from the Lincoln hit any remaining Iranian coastal missile batteries on the mainland within range of Karg. F-35Bs from the Tripoli establish air superiority overhead, targeting any Iranian aircraft that attempt to intercept. Phase 2. Vertical insertion. MV-22. Ospreys from the USS Tripoli, flying fast and low at night, insert the first wave of Marines directly onto Karg Island's key positions. The primary objectives in the first 30 minutes: the main oil loading terminal, the island's airstrip, and the communications center. Speed is everything. The longer Iran has to react and begin counterfire from the mainland, the higher the Marine casualty rate. Phase 3. Beach landing. Simultaneously, or immediately following the Osprey insertion, amphibious assault vehicles from the USS Boxer and USS Comstock approach the island's southwestern coastline, the side facing away from the Iranian mainland, providing maximum distance from mainland artillery. Landing craft bring in heavy weapons, vehicles, and the follow-on infantry battalions needed to hold the objective. Phase 4. Hold and defend. This is the hardest part. Iran's mainland is 15 miles away. They will immediately begin firing drones, anti-ship missiles, and ballistic rockets at the island and at the assault fleet offshore. The Marines need to establish perimeter defense, set up air defense systems, and sustain under bombardment until Iran either negotiates or exhausts its remaining long-range strike capacity. The Carrier Strike Group provides continuous close air support. The Viper attack helicopters neutralize fast boat threats in the surrounding water, and the nuclear submarine currently operating in the region, positioned to strike Iranian mainland launch sites, provides the strategic deterrent against Iran, escalating to its heaviest ballistic missiles. Outcome 1. Iran negotiates before the Marines arrive. The 5-day pause produces a back-channel agreement through Pakistan. Iran commits to reopening the strait and freezing nuclear enrichment. Trump declares total victory. The Marines are redirected. Oil falls. Both sides frame the outcome differently for their domestic audiences. But the shooting stops. This is possible. It requires Iran to swallow enormous public humiliation. But the alternative, losing Karg Island, is existentially worse for the regime. Outcome 2. The Marines land and Karg falls. No deal. The deadline expires. The 31st MEU executes the assault. Karg Island is seized within hours. Iran's oil export revenue drops to near zero overnight. Iran retaliates with everything it has left: drones, remaining ballistic missiles, and mining of the entire Persian Gulf as promised. The conflict expands sharply. Global oil markets go into severe shock. But with no navy, no air force, and rapidly depleting missiles, Iran's ability to sustain that retaliation has a time limit. Trump holds Karg Island until Iran signs the 15-point framework, then returns it as part of the deal. Outcome 3: stalemate and political pressure. Neither side moves. The pause extends. The Marines arrive in the region but receive no assault orders, held as a threat, not yet in action. Iran selectively allows ships from China and India through the strait while blocking the West. Oil stays above $100. Republican senators start asking hard questions about fuel prices and midterm elections. This is the scenario Trump wants least, because it gives Iran time to rebuild, gives domestic critics ammunition, and hands the initiative back to Tehran, which is exactly why the boxer left San Diego 3 weeks early. Here's the bottom line. Trump's 5-day pause is not a ceasefire. It is a final off-ramp, offered while the assault force is already at sea. The USS Tripoli left Japan before the pause was announced. The USS Boxer left California 3 weeks ahead of schedule. The Triton drones are circling Karg Island right now building an assault targeting package. The oil infrastructure on that island was deliberately left intact on March 13th. None of that is consistent with a man who expects negotiations to succeed. All of it is consistent with a commander who is prepared to take the island by force and is giving Iran one last chance to avoid that outcome. The 31st MEU is 2,500 Marines with F-35s, Ospreys, and Vipers. They trained for this, they are equipped for this, and they are currently crossing the ocean toward a 20-square-kilometer island that controls 90% of Iran's oil revenue. Whether they land on that beach or turn around and go home will be decided in the next few days, in rooms the public cannot see, by people on both sides who understand exactly what the alternative looks like. We will be here when it happens, breaking it down for you. Subscribe and leave your comment below.